Let's do some drywall.
Here we are, another patch job. I like to use these 1x2s. They're perfect for patching, so you can fit them inside the wall, nice and easy to work with. Add some screws, add plenty of screws. I like to add a lot of screws, that way I know my patches and my new sheetrock will never crack out. Nothing's worse than doing all this work and then the patch cracks out. So we add a lot of screws, plenty of screws, every 2, 4, 6 inches. That's usually a good gauge to go by. Install your sheetrock, add screws every 6 inches. 6 inches or so, get plenty of screws in there. Screws are cheap, re-cracking out and redoing the job's expensive. Scrape the area, add fiberglass. So with this mesh fiberglass, I like to pre-fill it with, this is a 5-minute mud. I like to pre-fill with the 5-minute mud to get the mud inside the groove of the tape. Push it down so it gets through that mesh fiber, fills it in, that way it prevents it from ever cracking. This is a 5-minute mud. You can also use a joint compound or whatever you're comfortable with. I like to use these 5-minute muds because I like to be able to try to turn around and finish the job in one trip if possible. Sometimes this one's a larger trip that I'm doing at the end of the day, so I'm just going to do a first coat with this with the 5-minute mud, slick it out like I'm doing now, slicking it out, taking off the excess mud. So basically this is almost like a second coat. But I'm going to finish off the day here with this with the regular joint compound. I don't have time to do a second coat with hot mud, so I'm just hitting it with a regular joint compound. I'm taking the second coat past my first coat, so it's a nice heavy coat. Get in the angle, get it all nice and clean. I'm going to let this set up overnight because it's towards the end of the day, so all I can do is a nice second coat, and then we're going to turn around the next day and come back, and we're going to do the texture process. The texture process basically requires me to sand everything I did. Here's the next day. I'm sanding everything down with 150 grit sandpaper, sanding the edges more than most. You want to sand these edges to blend them in to get rid of that sharp edge so it blends in nicely. Now I'm mixing some regular joint compound. I don't need a full bucket, so I'm just pouring in a quarter of a bucket, a box in there, and mixing it up. First I'm using the hand stomper. Now I'm going to use the mixer. I'm going to really grind it up, get it mixed up. I'm going to make a nice creamy texture here. This blends it up, gets it creamy, creamy, creamy. Makes a perfect spray texture when it's nice and creamy. Add a little more water. I want to thin it down a little more. And you just want to get it pretty consistent. You don't want it too thin, but you don't want it too thick. You need it to spray through the hopper. That is if you're doing a spray texture. This one here is a spray splatter. So I'm mixing regular joint compound for a spray splatter. See, this mixer is nice and aggressive. It does a job. It gets the mud mixed up nice and creamy. Now I got the hopper, filled up the hopper. Now we're going to spray. I'm doing a splatter. I like to hit my angles, so